Jessica Radcliffe was not just a marine animal trainer, she was the living heart of Ocean Wave Marine Park, the person who seemed to carry the ocean in her soul. On any given day, if you walked into the park before it opened, you'd see her silhouette moving along the tanks in the dawn light, her hand brushing the railings, her eyes scanning the deep water as if greeting old friends. To her, these creatures were not exhibits or performers, they were family. She could kneel by the pool and speak softly, and the orcas and dolphins would glide toward her, as if pulled by an invisible thread of trust. Her love for the ocean began in her childhood on the rocky shores of Cornwall, where she first saw wild dolphins cresting the waves at sunset. That moment shaped her life's purpose, to bridge the gap between humans and the mysteries of the sea. Years later, after training and countless hours in marine life programs, she found herself at Ocean Wave, where she became beloved by visitors and fellow trainers alike. But among all the animals she worked with, there was one who stood out, Kai, a powerful, sleek male dolphin with unmatched speed, intelligence, and a charisma that made him the star of every show. For years, Kai and Jessica shared a partnership so seamless it seemed like mind reading. He knew her signals before she even made them, responded with playfulness and precision, and often swam to her side between acts as if checking she was all right. But in recent months, something had shifted. Kai's eyes, usually bright and curious, had grown restless. His movements became sharper, more unpredictable. At first, Jessica thought it was just seasonal stress from the relentless summer crowds, but deep down she felt there was something more. She mentioned it once to the head trainer, who brushed it off with a laugh, saying animals had moods just like people. Still, Jessica couldn't ignore the unease. She started spending extra hours with Kai after the park closed, working with him quietly, trying to soothe whatever turbulence had taken root in him. She whispered to him in the moonlit stillness of the tank, reminding him of their first swim together, the trust they had built. But the tension lingered. August 12th began like any other, staff meeting over coffee, early exercises with the orcas, laughter from visitors drifting in through the gates, but the air felt heavier to Jessica. She had 2 shows with the orcas and 1 with the dolphins scheduled. The afternoon dolphin show drew a packed stadium. The sun blazed down, children leaned forward in their seats, parents aimed cameras. The announcer's voice boomed as Jessica jogged onto the platform, wetsuit shimmering with droplets. Kai was the first to appear, leaping in a perfect arc that sprayed the front rows with a glittering mist. The crowd roared, and Jessica's smile was genuine, but her eyes stayed alert. The routine began smoothly. Dolphins leapt through hoops, balanced balls, performed synchronized spins. Then, halfway through, Kai missed a cue. It was a small mistake, invisible to most, but Jessica felt the change instantly. She gave a subtle signal. He ignored it. Instead, he swam tight circles, surfacing with a sharp exhale. The audience laughed, thinking it part of the act. Jessica carried on, but her heart was beating faster. When Kai's turn came again, he launched out of the water with more force than usual, drenching the crowd in a wave that drew cheers, but to Jessica it felt wrong. This was not playful energy. She crouched at the edge, extending her hand. "Easy, boy," she murmured. For a heartbeat, his head surfaced, eyes locking on hers, and the world seemed to still. Then he dove under, brushing the platform hard enough to make her stumble. She forced a smile for the crowd and finished the show, but that night she stood by the tank long after dark, the moonlight shimmering on Kai's back as he swam slow, deliberate circles. She whispered again, her voice trembling without knowing why. The next day was the big weekend show. Every seat was filled, the air thick with heat and excitement. Backstage, Jessica looked toward the holding pool. Kai swam lazily, eyes fixed on her. The show began without incident. Dolphins performed flawlessly, the crowd cheering at each leap. Midway through, Kai glided toward her for a routine pass where she would pat his side. She leaned down, hand outstretched. Then, in a sudden blur, he rammed her with his rostrum, knocking her clean off the platform. The crowd cheered, assuming it was part of the act. Jessica surfaced, waving as if all was fine, but Kai was already cutting through the water toward her with alarming speed. Trainers on the sidelines blew whistles in urgent bursts. Kai rammed her again from below, sending her tumbling. The water churned violently as he circled, each pass tighter and closer. The other dolphins had fled to the far end of the pool. Jessica tried calming signals, her voice low and urgent. "Easy, Kai, easy." For a moment, he hesitated, and she made for the ladder, but he blocked her path, massive and unyielding. Gasps swept through the crowd as the tension became visible. A mother pulled her child close. Kai lunged, grabbing her wetsuit sleeve in his jaws. She twisted free, neoprene tearing, but the force dragged her under. The surface boiled with bubbles and splashes, obscuring her from view. Trainers rushed in with poles and nets, shouting commands. Seconds felt endless. She surfaced, eyes wide, reaching for the platform. Hands almost caught hers, then Kai struck again, pulling her under for the final time. The crowd screamed. The announcer's voice shook as alarms blared. Behind the scenes, chaos reigned. It took minutes to separate Kai and coax him into a holding pen. When Jessica was pulled from the water, trainers worked desperately, their voices breaking with pleas. The ambulance waited, but everyone knew. By evening, the news was everywhere. Beloved trainer dies in dolphin attack at Ocean Wave. The next day, flowers appeared at the park gates, joined by photos, letters, and children's drawings. Her colleagues called her a rare soul whose light touched humans and sea creatures alike. Videos of her smiling beside Kai spread online, each clip now feeling hauntingly final. The park announced Kai would not be euthanized, honoring Jessica's belief that animals were never to blame for acting on instinct. Reactions were divided, but those who knew her understood. A candlelight vigil on the beach drew hundreds, former colleagues, inspired children, grieving families. As the tide crept in, lanterns were released, drifting like stars over the water. The dolphin shows were suspended indefinitely. Jessica's family founded a marine conservation trust in her name. But something no one expected happened in the days after. Kai, once the park's most spirited performer, changed. He refused food, ignored trainers, and floated listlessly in his enclosure. Days passed, and his eyes seemed distant, his energy fading. Those who worked with him swore they saw a sadness in him, as if he were waiting for someone who would never return. He stopped responding to calls, stopped playing, and his once powerful leap ceased entirely. Within weeks, he had wasted away, refusing to eat or drink, until one quiet morning they found him lying motionless at the surface, the water around him still and silent. Some said it was instinct. Others believed it was something deeper, that Kai, in his own way, had grieved himself to death, carrying Jessica's memory into the depths where they had once swum together. And so, in life and in death, they were bound by the fragile, powerful, and heartbreaking connection between human and sea.